Hello Primary 5, nice to talk to you again. Now I'm going to complete talking with you about relative clauses. In the last videos we talked about who, and we said that we will use who as a relative clause refer to people as subject or object. Whom, and I can use it to refer to people only as object. Which I will use it to refer to animals or things in subject or object positions, and I can use that instead of who and instead of which, instead of who to refer to people and instead of which to refer to animals or things. Now I will talk with you about whose. Whose is used for possessive, who used for possessive. So, which types of possessives we have in English? One of the most famous types of possessive when I talk about possessive adjectives like my, his, her, its, our, your, and their. Possessive adjectives are one of the most famous types of adjectives that we use to refer to that someone owns this thing, or when we talk about animals or things and I want to say that this animal has this thing, or this car has a red color or whatever, I will use possessive adjectives like my, or his, or her, or its, or our, or your, or their. So, instead of these possessive adjectives, we will use what? We will use relative clause whose. Okay, let's see our example. When I say, Sama is a beautiful girl. Her eyes are blue. I will say Sama, whose eyes are blue, whose eyes, instead of her, I used whose, and I said Sama, whose eyes are blue, is a beautiful girl. Another example. This is my friend Tom. His dad is a pilot. I will say, this is my friend Tom, whose dad is a pilot. Okay? Okay. Another type of sentences, and some of us may confuse on it. Let's talk about other examples when I use in or with to refer to that someone has this thing or owns this thing. If I said, the man in black jacket is my dad. Let's see. The man in black jacket is my dad. Or when I talk about animals, for example, I will say, I like cats with fluffy hair. You know adjective fluffy اللي هي القطط اللي بيبقى عندها فرو كده وشعر ناعم. So let's see. When I talk here about in, or when I talk about with, how can I use possessive whose instead of in the first sentence, for example? Okay, I will say the man whose jacket, as whose followed with what? Followed with noun. So I will say the man whose jacket is black, comma, is my dad. So, it's a big mistake to say the man whose black jacket. This is so wrong. Don't do it please. ما تستخدمش أبدا الجملة بدون ما تفهم معناها. لو أنا قلت the man whose black jacket يعني كأني بقول اللي هو جاكيت أسود. طب إيه الفرق يا ميس؟ ما انتي لما جينا استخدمنا possessive adjectives my or his or her, I made just omit for possessive adjective and add relative clause whose. Yeah, because possessive adjectives always followed with noun. If you remember, I should say my bag, my dad, our school or our class or their mother and etc. دايما ال possessive adjectives بيجي بعديها noun، فده بيسهل لي حل الجملة. ان انا كل اللي انا بعمله بعمل ايه؟ كل اللي انا بعمله ان انا بعمل omit لل possessive adjective وبحط بدلها ال whose. بدل her eyes, instead of her eyes I will say whose eyes. Instead of his dad I will say whose dad. But here I can't do this as I have adjective. So I can't say the man whose black jacket. This is so wrong. Whose followed with noun. So I will say the man whose jacket is black is my dad. Okay, try to think about this one please. Just a minute, think about it. If I want to use whose, now that fluffy is adjective and her is noun, so you will say what? Yeah, good job for everyone said it. I will say I like cats whose hair what? Is fluffy. I talk about cats, yeah, but here you talk about uncountable nouns, so I will use is. And I will say I like cats whose hair is fluffy. Okay? Okay, so in our possessives, I should know if I have the meaning preceded with possessive adjective like my or his or her or its or our or your or their, I will just make omit for the possessive adjective and add whose. But if I have the sentence in this form, I will have to use the noun first and then followed with the adjective. Use the noun at first and then followed noun at first and then followed with the adjective. Okay? Okay? Let's see other types of relative clauses. We have when for time or relative clause of time and where as relative clause of place. So, when I talk about time, I will say Friday is my holiday. I will visit my grandma on Friday. Again, Friday is my holiday. I will visit my grandma on Friday. Yeah, this is the repeated part. So I will say Friday is my holiday when I will visit my grandma. Or I will say Friday when I will visit my grandma is my holiday. Okay? Let's see other example for places. Where? Relative clause of place. So I will say I like traveling to Alexandria. This is abbreviation for the word Alexandria, Alex. I like traveling to Alexandria. I can smell fresh air there. هناك. Yeah, this is a repeated part, so I will omit there and I will say I like traveling to Alexandria where I can smell fresh air. So, both in using when or using where, I can have preposition of time in when, and we know prepositions of time in or on or at. This is called the prepositions of time. With where I can have in, on, at, from, by, next to, in front of, any prepositions of place. Okay? So, if you have preposition of time with when, I will omit it when I use when. And if I have preposition of place when I use where, I will omit the preposition of place with the repeated pronoun or with the repeated place I talk about. Okay? Okay. But if I asked you to use which to refer to time or place instead of using when or where, what will you do? Look with me. If I asked you to use which, you will say what? Look at example number 1. When I say, this is the house I was born in it. In this house. So this is place. I will say, this is the house. This is the house where I was born, and I will omit in it. If I want to use which instead of where, I will say what? Look with me. This is the house in which I was born. Again, I can say with where, this is the house where I was born. So you made what? You made omit for in it. Here, if I will use which, I will say, this is the house in which I was born. Another example. I like the park. We can play and run at it. I can say, I like the park where we can play and run. Or I can say, I like the park at which. At. Do you remember at? Yeah. يبقى ببساطة كده شديدة. If I will use relative clause when for time or relative clause where for place, I will make what? I will make omit for preposition of time or preposition of place. But if I will use which instead of when or instead of where, so I have to use preposition when, in or at or on or any preposition I will have in the sentence before the relative clause which. The same in time, I will say, it's 6 o'clock, I get up at this time. I will say, it's 6 o'clock when I get up. Or, if I will use which, I will say, it's 6 o'clock at which I get up. At which I get up. So, when, I will make omit for at, for preposition. But with which, I will use the preposition before the relative clause which. I will use the preposition before the relative clause which. Okay? Okay. Let's try to answer some of our questions. We answered some of them in our class, and let's try to answer some of them. Look with me in your exercise booklet. If I will say this is the time at, I will have at before time, so I have to use at which. This is the time at which he usually leaves. If you don't have here at, I will say this is the time when he usually leaves. So either I will say this is the time at, I have to use which, at which. If I don't have at, I will say this is the time when he usually leaves. The same here. They go to the park at At which. If we omit at, I will say where. At the park is a place, I will say where. Okay? Okay? Another one. I like summer holidays. It's a time. There is no prepositions here, so you will use what? Yeah, good job for everyone said it. I will use when. Number 7, the book. Good job. Which? Okay. I will follow you later with answers for these questions, and I will send a picture of them for you in our group. Thank you for watching and study hard, and any question you can answer me inbox. Goodbye, Primary 5.